And last but certainly not least, we have Brendan Allen taking on Paul Craig in the main event at 185 pounds. Allen comes in with 5 knockouts, 13 subs, and 4 decisions to his name. Paul Craig, meanwhile, 4 knockouts, 13 subs, no decision victories. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but I do not believe that Paul Craig has seen a decision loss he has 1 decision loss in his career. So, Brendan Allen, this is his second main event, and in the first one, he beat Andre Muniz in the 3rd round. It's worth noting that Paul Craig's first middleweight fight, and also his most recent fight, was also against Andre Muniz, beaten by ground and pound in round 2. Allen's 2 losses in the UFC were to Sean Strickland and Chris Curtis. So he lost to the Extreme Couture brothers. I forget what I think they have a podcast. Yeah, it's called The Man Dance. So pretty funny that he loses to the 2 podcast hosts as we preview that in our MMA pod now. Allen has the clear striking advantage over Craig. It's night and day. Most people have a striking advantage over Craig. I would be surprised if there was that many in the middleweight division that didn't have a striking advantage over Craig. He loves the leg kicks and loves the kicks to the body, but that's where I see there potentially being an avenue for Craig to be able to latch onto a couple of them, or Allen overexposes himself in one of the and gets a little too cozy, and then Craig's able to pounce. I don't know if he necessarily can knock out Paul Craig, but I do know that he's going to be able to put some serious damage on him throughout the fight. The thing with Paul Craig, though, and you know this as well as I do, Rick, he's not going to go down. He's not going to go out. Like, he's going to look like dead, battered. He's going to look like a zombie, but he's still a massive submission threat to anyone he is fighting. Paul Craig, this is his first 5-round fight in his entire MMA career. So he's been a champion in other promotions, but championship fights in those promotions were only 3 rounds. It's his second fight at 185 pounds. So he made the move down after kind of being a little wishy-washy in light heavyweight, but being light heavyweight for a long time. He's a master of his craft when it comes to the submission game, and that's the thing. This is why this is such an interesting fight. Any fight with Paul Craig is going to come down quite literally to the final seconds, because if you slip up once and give him any type of window, he will pounce. Where he is not, I would even give Allen the advantage, like, from a wrestling standpoint. Like, he's going to be able to wrestle and stuff, but just one lapse in your concentration, and Paul Craig will be able to get you. And that's where I see Craig, like, having the value here. Allen has just, like, started to just run away with these odds. And I get it. Like, he should, like, very rightfully so favor him. But, like, he opened at minus 270 on DraftKings. Brendan Allen, that is. He's now down to minus 400. Like, he's minus 450 in some spots. That's just not right for somebody who is such a threat like Paul Craig, in my opinion, where I feel like you're getting a lot of good value here. And I'd be interested to see if you feel the same way, or if you're going to kind of zag with my analysis there, Rick.
Yeah, I think that Paul Craig has a lot of – he's got his ways that he can win a fight, and because of that, he will always be in every fight before he starts, in the sense that at any point he can get rocked, or the fight could go to the ground. He could pull guard, whatever it is, and then you're in a world of danger. But his opponent in Brendan Allen is a guy that offensively is great. I'm worried a little bit about him wanting to take the fight to the mat. And hopefully, like, I'm hoping in his fight IQ that he's not trying to say, you know what, let me prove myself as the more dominant grappler and submission artist, and takes the fight where he should, which is on the feet. Because as you mentioned, and you've covered most of it, and there's really not too much to add there, but he is the much more adept striker. He should be the quicker one. I worry a little bit about Craig's chin, which has been tested at light heavyweight. Granted, this is middleweight, but we'll see how the weight cut affects him in a sense. But if this fight is on the feet, Allen wins 99 times out of 100 for me. And if it goes to the ground, I think that Allen still has a decent shot, but I think that it's probably Craig's advantage there on the ground. I think pretty irrefutably. But what I've got in this fight is under 1.5 at minus 115. I think that Brendan Allen's going to be slick around the outside, similar to how in the main event or the co-main event last week, Tom Aspinall was against Sergey Pavlovich, where he was just the quicker guy on the outside, could keep the range if he wanted to, and then just picked him apart. And it might not be as straightforward as that fight was at heavyweight, but I see sort of the same thing happening in Craig having to go at long ranges to get the fight to the ground or to pull guard. And if Allen is probably, I'm sure that his camp has just been telling him, keep it on the feet, keep it on the feet. And that wrestling is good enough to keep it there. So if he decides to take it to the mat, it'll be a lot closer fight than it is. But I think that that's where the odds, or that's why the odds are where they are, which is so split. But yeah, so I've got the under. I've got Allen to win, but I don't. Minus 450 is never something you should take straight up, and we know that.
Or parlay, for that matter.
In particular, there is so much. There's so much that could go wrong for a minus 450 favorite that makes me apprehensive to take it. Yeah,
you shouldn't be parlaying those odds either. To be honest, like when you get that high, it's not adding a ton of value to a parlay. I am picking Allen to win the fight. I am a Paul Craig fan. I will give that stipulation. I am going to put the money on him, though, to win because I think it's such good value. I really do. Like, there is a world where Paul Craig gets the finish here, and it's going to be insane. It'll be, like, all over the headlines and stuff because Brendan Allen would be a massive win. There's also a world where Paul Craig loses and then retires or fights one more time and retires because that was a rumor for a bit 2 fights ago that he was going to potentially retire after another loss. So I am going to go Paul Craig for the value here. And the best I can find right now is plus 350 on Caesars as well as Bet Online. So I'll be going with Paul Craig at plus 350 for half a unit on the main event. That is my 5th dog in a row on the main card. I start off with a favorite in the parlay and then end with five dogs in a row. So I'm honestly, I mean, I know that it's 5 underdogs. It's not the most exciting thing, but I really do feel sincerely that there is a lot of value on the underdogs this week. And last but not least, I want to go ahead and bring in our producer, Ben, as he would like a few words as well on this fight after people loved his analysis last week too. So Ben, come on in. What do you think about this Brendan Allen and Paul Craig bout?
Welcome. Appreciate that. First of all, I have to admit, and by the way, I wish I could be on video tonight. I did not set up to be on the pod tonight, so I apologize. I don't have a backdrop or anything, but
caught him by
I
surprise.
do want to admit I got owned. I got owned on the 295 card, right? Like I was very transparently a Yuri Prohaska super fan there. I let my emotion of being a fan kind of get in the way. Paredes is clearly a very good fighter, and he looks to have a really nice next, say, 18 months in that division, just being dominant. However, I will say this is a little bit unfair too, but I think there's some real value here on this fight that we're talking about tonight for the UFC Fight Night. I think Paul Craig's got ridiculous value here. Now, that said, I can't dispute either side of what you guys have said. I think Paul Craig makes mistakes in fights more often than Brendan Allen does. And I think if he's got a good camp coming into this fight, which that's debatable. I don't know where he's at on that. I don't know how hard he trains, in and out of each fight. I think that if he's got anybody with any brain cells, they already know to drill into his head, stop only looking for the submission, right? Be aware that you can get beaten here in a lot of different ways. And I think he has good value if somebody told him that, right? What scares me a little bit is the amount that this line has climbed since they went live. It makes me feel like, and I did talk very briefly with Rick ahead of the pod here. I feel like that feels like something got leaked from one of the camps, right? Like somebody knows something that the other camp doesn't know, or bookies know something that we don't know yet, and it's not as obvious, as to why that would climb so high. Now, all that said, I also think they're factoring in that Craig is older by nearly 10 years, right? Not only that, Allen's got a 4 or 5 fight win streak, and Allen picks fights incredibly well, which I think, unfortunate for the lines here, I think that actually factors way too heavily in this fight. So again, I think there's clear value on Craig here based on the resume and the opponent strength that has happened over the last 10 months, 18 months, because I think he showed better against Muniz, and I think a lot of other fights that you can pull into this and say just resume wise, Craig probably has a legitimate shot at being a very, very highly valued underdog here, right? And we saw that earlier, with a couple of fights against Allen, where the underdog, really put it to him, right? So Curtis being one of them, right? I mean, that Curtis fight, I think Curtis was a ridiculous underdog in that. Something like I don't remember the number, but it was like 230 or something like that on that fight. And that was closing. I think it opened even further apart on that. And, he handed him his ass. So from that perspective, I would say there are some historical things that probably factor heavily here from my perspective that didn't factor into the actual lines on this. And I just think it's one of those things that you're right. He is a better striker, but he's not the best striker. And my biggest concern with this fight is where does he go afterwards, right? He's perennially going to be in, 9 to 13 ranking. There's 5 guys ahead of him that just steamroll him, at least, right? Maybe even 6 or 7 guys ahead of him in the rankings in middleweight that just steamroll him no matter what the outcome is here, right? And I just feel like at 35-ish or whatever he is, 36 years old, Craig has an impetus to really throw it out all on the line, right? And so I don't see him breaking an arm like he did to Jamal Hill. Sorry about that, Andy. I know Jamal is your boy, but I definitely could see something weird happening, right? Where it's like you slip up once, Craig will bite you, dude. I mean, he's definitely not a guy that is going to get knocked out easily. And, judging on some of the older fights, unfortunately, because I think, and I'm rambling here at this point, I think Allen picks fights so well and signs contracts so well on fights since the Curtis fight that you almost have to pull those out of the equation because he stylistically matched up so perfectly in those last 4 or 5 fights that I just think matchmaking was so good there on his end. I don't think that matchmaking is as good on this one. I think stylistically on the ground and especially in the lower quarters of this matchup, Craig has an advantage here that isn't being reflected. So we'll see, of course, right? I mean, he's 10 years older almost. But damn, that fight resume is ridiculous. And Craig has zero fear. He doesn't care, and he knows a guy like this isn't a one-punch knockout for him, right? So I mean, the other way around. He's not going to get knocked out by one punch, right? So he has a 1-inch reach advantage, 1-inch leg advantage. I just see the striking being better than what it is on paper. Again, not saying he's a good striker, not saying that's an even matchup on striking. I'm just saying one slip up at an extra inch probably makes a big difference in a fight like this. But man, I'm actually looking real forward to this fight. I thought this fight card was pretty crap, to be honest, but this fight looks really cool. So,
I think this is going to be a really good one too. So Ben's with me on Paul Craig at plus 350.
Well,
Rick's
actually,
got under 1.5 and minus 110.
I'll clarify that real quick, Andy. I didn't take a bet like that here. I actually think the inside the distance numbers as they come out might be a good play. I think I locked in a half unit personally on a flyer on Craig because I think he's got the potential to win that. But I wouldn't go out telling everybody in all of my friends and family to go bet on Craig on this fight, right? I lean very slightly Allen with the caveat that Allen's last 4 or 5 fights have been really heavily match made. So
yeah, I mean Rick's got under 1.5. I think inside the distance would be absurdly priced, unfortunately. But I do think I'm with you. I am going to tell everybody to bet on Paul Craig, man. Just because I think that it's such good value. But yeah, totally agree with your analysis. Rick, any closing thoughts to send us on our way here?
Yeah, my closing thought, and I'll keep it brief, is the odds. When Paul Craig fought Andre Muniz recently, both this year, they both fought Andre Muniz this year, as we mentioned. The odds when Paul Craig fought Andre Muniz, he was plus 185. When Brendan Allen fought him, he was plus 175. So MMA odds or MMA math, you would say that they're about even or so. Obviously, that's matchup based, and there's so much more that factors into that. I understand that. But minus 450 feels a little sharp, feels a little steep. So I'm with you guys in the sense that there's value on Craig. I think Allen runs away with it here personally. I think he's able to finish him, but I would not be shocked if he got stuck in an armbar. Not in the slightest. So I'll go under 1.5. Yeah,
I can say I'm going to be stoked not losing a ton of money like I did on 295 because I'm not making massive bets on this. But I can also say I would be okay with either, right? I feel like all the guys ahead of them in middleweight are just such a class higher than both of them right now, and for different reasons. But it's almost a non-event whoever wins this because the next 25 months are going to suck for them.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to kind of close out our analysis on this one. Is like the significance of this card. Sometimes you get some fight nights that have significance on the future rankings, and this is not one of them, unfortunately. I think this is going to be a card that offers some really good value on underdogs. I think this is going to be a card that offers some interesting matchups and some fun fights. But the actual impact on the grand scheme of MMA and the MMA world and the rankings world, that is to be determined. And that's for y'all to determine. So drop a comment below, leave us a like, make sure to give us a subscribe, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at RickHA Sports, at AndyHA Sports. We'll be tweeting out some more stuff as the week goes along. And stay tuned as we continue to drop more content for you. We've got the Sharpen the Public podcast coming out later this week, which you can also find on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. And yeah, I think that's it. So appreciate you all listening. Hope that this format was solid for you guys as it was for us, where we're able to shine some light on the fights that we're looking forward to in the prelims and then really break down the main card the best we can. So I'm Andy signing off. That's Rick. That is our good man, Ben. And appreciate you all listening. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.